Nothing Worthwhile, the recognized symbol of excellence in crappy podcasting.
Chicago breaks up. Peter Cetera leaves the band. I'm wondering, Groo, there was no opening package. Is this going to be like a 20-minute podcast? And Peter Cetera leaves the band. Good night, everybody.
Well, I think sometimes we just want to get to the point. There's not the thing is there's not a lot out there.
Well, obviously we'll talk about Chicago in a little bit. We'll do our opening stuff, but the one thing I think we could talk about just initially is when you think of Chicago, you don't really think of Chicago
as we think of Chicago as we're playing Jefferson Airplane.
Oh well, Jefferson Airplane as well. I mean, when you think of Chicago, I don't know. I don't get the sense that they have a very hardcore fan base like a Bruce Springsteen, like a Billy Joel, like even maybe a Phil Collins or Genesis.
I agree. Right? I think they're on that. They're always on that second tier of rock stardom. But the question is, where would they have gone if Cetera had stayed? Because he was their hit machine. In the early to mid '80s, and then he skipped town, and they became kind of has-beens shortly after, right?
Well,
no,
I think they've become a nostalgia act, like most legacy artists from our generation. I think they're obviously prior to COVID, I think they were solid summer touring acts.
So is Engelbert Humperdinck, I mean, all these guys.
I mean, my feeling on Chicago would be if they were in my city, in my town, and I had a few extra bucks, I'd see them, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't kill myself. If I knew Bruce or Billy, I'm going. There's just you're not stopping me.
I agree with you. And I've never seen Chicago, and I kind of would like to. I think it'd be fun, but it's nothing I would.
It is a fun.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's nothing I'd get on a plane for. But they look. If we, it'll be one of those bands that when we look at the songs that they've done, we'll probably be like, why isn't this band more well known or popular? Because they probably have a lot of songs out there that we know, but we don't really associate with Chicago, for example. And I know we'll get to this, but look at the song "Glory of Love" by Cetera that he did for Karate Kid 2. That sounds no different. It's a great song. I love it. I mean, it's beautifully cheesy, but it's the same song as "You're the Inspiration." It's the same song as "Hard Habit to Break." It's the same song as "Hard to Say I'm Sorry." So it's like, is it Cetera or is it Chicago? It's just it really comes down to it's all David Foster, I guess.
Well, that was my point. I think I want to hold. Yeah, I want to hold off there because I don't want to dig too deep early. But I think David Foster is the key piece there, obviously.
Yeah, and even he said that in the documentary.
So you mentioned about hopping on a plane. You want to give us an update on WrestleMania tickets? Anything?
No news is no news. There's literally, I check every day and I'm looking to see what's going on. I know some of the events surrounding WrestleMania not having to do with the WWE are being scheduled. WrestleCon is still happening. They haven't released information about it yet, but they're setting it up. I'm sure there are a lot of other things going on. You got to remember, without getting political, Tampa Bay is basically pretending that COVID isn't a thing. So they just had the Super Bowl there, and it was like Mardi Gras. And that's what it was like when Tampa hosted WrestleMania last time. So I'm expecting that the town will be up and running. But as far as tickets and as far as the actual Mania events go, the official ones, there's been nothing that I've seen about it.
Okay,
So.
but look, if you're going, if I'm going, I'm taking responsibility. I'm going, and I know at my own risk. So I mean,
of course.
either we go and and we enjoy. We could be picky about the events, but we go and we enjoy, and we take the necessary precaution, and let's let it rip and have.
Absolutely.
Have,
I
would like to go to WrestleCon. That's a no-brainer for me.
You know what? Honestly, that. With the
I'd like to do NXT because I've never done if they do it, any kind of WrestleMania weekend NXT show. I don't know. I'm hearing. Is it 2 nights? I'm hearing. I thought I read somewhere that they were going to do 2 nights.
I heard 2 nights.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have to do 2 nights of Mania, but I would. I definitely would. I mean, if there was if there was one night that was really we felt stronger than the other, I would definitely do the one night. But if there's 2 nights and they're good matches,
I don't know what they're going to do because they're a little more than a month away.
I know.
And they haven't really announced anything. They haven't really made many announcements about any Hall of Fame or anything. I think they're still trying to put whatever they're going to do together. But look, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if there's something going on, we're going to go in some capacity. But we've always said that we have more, I mean, it might be heresy to say this, but for some reason we have more fun at the events surrounding WrestleMania than the actual event itself. And that to me, go ahead.
You hit it right on the head.
Yeah,
it's not heresy. I mean, I could go to the host town with you, get a decent hotel, go to all the surrounding events, and sit on the network and watch WrestleMania live and be happy. But I'm very happy to go to the WrestleMania show. Yeah, but come on.
I mean, part of the whole experience is getting some Fleabag motel where we could catch hepatitis C. I mean, that's...
Of course.
We're not
I think Orlando, that was a rough... Well, actually, New Orleans was in a...
New Orleans.
The room wasn't bad, but we were in a rough part
Oh, my God.
Town.
Remember that?
We went. They had like a continental breakfast every morning. Free. Hey, we loved it. And
free is free, man.
The smell of marijuana and death was permeating in our hallway as we walked.
But then we walk out. Remember, every morning we'd see the van, like the
it was like a marijuana van. Delivery.
It was So that was. Look, every time we've gone, it's been an adventure, and I would dare to say that. WrestleCon and the Hulk Hogan signing that we went to, those have been our 2 favorite things that we've done in the WrestleManias. The WrestleMania, the actual show, while it's great to go to, if it's not a great show, it's not a great show. But we know at WrestleCon...
Did you enjoy the fan access with WWE? Because I sure did.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Those, all of these things, and even the stuff with NXT that goes on there, But who knows how these things are going to be run? I get the feeling that it's going to be run as normal. It's just masks are going to be required, but I think that'll be the
no. I think they're going to cap the attendance at 25,000 for a 60,000, 45,000. I know that for a fact.
That probably also means that tickets will be limited for the other things too. I'm sure WrestleCon won't be cramming 10,000 people into.
Yeah, those might be a little more free for all-ish because the WWE is also going to be cognizant of PR and stuff like that. So they're going to follow whatever recommendations they agree to. They'll follow it pretty hardcore. Yeah. WrestleCon is kind of your lowest common denominator, and we love it. Fun kind of deal. Okay, so what I've read so far is, a Roman versus Edge is a lock. Sasha versus Bianca is a lock. And quite honestly, I think that might. They've really talked about there's only I think I read 4 matches that are a lock so far. I think you're going to get Charlotte, Asuka on the Raw women's side, and I don't think the on the men's side for Raw, whatever it is, the Universal or WWE, McIntyre, I don't think that's been settled yet. So what you said earlier, Andy, I don't think that I think they have maybe 25% of the card locked down.
You don't see a Brock Lesnar involvement at all in anything?
I don't. Listen, they might. I mean, Cena's been teased. They've talked about Cena, but Cena has been on the record saying he's filming The Widowmaker. He's in like another country, and because of travel and COVID protocols, he didn't think that was a realistic expectation. If they were going to perhaps bring in a veteran with a big name, I think it might be on the Raw side, because I think Drew versus Sheamus, although I would like to see that match, and I would not mind it at WrestleMania, I don't know if they feel in their eyes, and Busted Open Bully Ray said the same thing, which I don't know if they feel that's a main event WrestleMania caliber match with those two guys. I like to see it because the story has intrigued me as a fan, but I don't know with those two names if they feel that's a marquee to put on a WrestleMania poster.
I agree 100%. I don't think it is. I think I think that, and I told you this, I even though we've seen it before, I wouldn't have minded seeing Reigns versus Lesnar, and here's why. Because I love the Paul Heyman aspect of it. Reigns is a heel now, and I wouldn't mind seeing Lesnar come in and like being like the lone warrior now, and having that different kind of dynamic as one of the title matches. And then for Drew, I would have put Drew versus Edge. I think that would be a great match.
So I think initially, I don't think that's not happening this year.
Oh, it's not. I know it's not.
I do think a Brock Roman could potentially happen, but I think it's 2022, and it may not even be made. It might be like a SummerSlam.
Event. Like maybe a different pay-per-view. Yeah.
Yeah, I think looking forward, they're looking at perhaps Big E versus Roman for next year. What I do think is, if they're smart, at least on the SmackDown side, I think they're positioning Roman for like a long, old school kind of run as a champion.
But aren't they sort of getting The Rock lined up for next year?
Perhaps. It's all debatable.
The Rock versus Roman would be, if not a great match, it would still be that's a marquee match, of course.
All right, well, I'll wrap my piece on wrestling with this. From what I read with The Rock, I've read there's one more match in him, that he was not satisfied with the final match against Cena at WrestleMania. That was 28, whatever it was, 29 right. in New York. He was not satisfied, and it's just a question of lining it up with the film projects and before he gets a little too old. So I've read that the feeling is there's one more match, and I think it would be at Roman, and I think it would be him, Roman passing the reign over to Roman, so to speak. Yeah, and I think they
could build, if I'm booking them, I would build that as the Rock swan song, his retirement match, and put him in the Hall of Fame same year.
Agree.
Build it all around that. That would be interesting. But you know what? What we don't know, we don't know. So, we could speculate till.
Well, Andrew, I would be remiss to let everybody know that they are listening to Nothing Worthwhile with Moody Groo, India's #1 bi-coastal podcast featuring two annoying Jews. Evan Moody here on the West Coast. Braxton Moody on the floor sleeping with a little scrunchy taco chewy toy next to him, a puppy Shango. Andrew Gruthius on the East Coast. Gru, how's it going?
Well, I have my puppy chewy toy. No, everything's fine. The weather's a little cool today, which is nice, although
same thing here.
Although I don't, it's hard for me to say that with what's going on in other parts of the country. Weather-wise, but here it's pretty comfortable today. It was very hot this week. I hate saying that too, and people are freezing to death in Texas.
Oh, and, please! I mean, come on! You moved to Florida so you could avoid that stuff. I
know, but what's happening over there is just not. It's evil, or
I thought I read that the temperatures.
God's pissed at somebody over there.
Oh God, yeah, okay. You mean an old guy with a big long mustache and beard is looking down, going, "You sinners"?
I guess. I don't know. Some of the shit that's gone over the last year is borderline biblical. I have to say that, But yeah, everything here is fine. We're schools are moving slowly back to. We're getting more and more kids in each week. The protocols are being followed. Kids are being very, very responsible, and it's things are knock wood. Things are looking up. And
yes, thank you. A very serious, very serious.
Well, I mean, you asked me how I was, and I'm a bit more optimistic these days than I have been. Look, this has taken its toll on everybody, and as we recognize that, I think we'll all be the better for it. Those of us who survive.
Thank you, Andrew. When Andrew says he's more optimistic, I read into it. The lithium is working.
Yeah, no, you read into it like he's got a noose hanging in the bathroom.
No. Stop it.
But my folks got their vaccine, so I'm happy about that. I think you got yours, right?
I'm going for my second shot. You'll be so proud of me, Mr. Vaccination. February 24th. I'm going to.
Why would I be proud of you?
Farm, it's the football stadium. It's where the Cardinals play. Last time I just went, I wanted Kyler Murray's autograph. And somehow I got wrangled into a line.
Are you getting Braxton? Are you getting Braxton? Watch, bring Braxton. Get him vaccinated. He'll be able to get Braxtonated before us here in Florida.
Yeah, well, I mean, my experience. I went on a website. I answered a few questions. I was considered section qualifying for 1B. That was educators, and
we're still.
And they give you on the website. They give you a list, of locations.
Yeah,
and you got to hit each one, and if they're busy, it's X'd out or grayed out, and you got to find the opening date. And then when I went to the first one, it was really actually well organized. I had a guy with an iPad came to my car and said, "You want to schedule? I could schedule you for your next one." I said, "Sure," and he just said, "Well, are you free on the 24th at 6:45 a.m.?" I said, "Book me," and so that's it.
Yeah, here
you get there. There's all these signs. You get into a car line. It really wasn't bad. It took about an hour, and I thought that was pretty reasonable.
Here they're just I guess they're still on phase 1 because nothing has changed.
Well, Groo, your state may be bigger. You may have
more seniors,
a larger percentage of older folks.
Seniors. More seniors, but we have had a problem. People with, and I guess I can't say I wouldn't do the same thing, but a lot of the snowbirds who decided to stay north this year because of COVID are now coming down because they can get the vaccine here easily than they can up there because if they're over 65. So that's pretty much what's making us go so slowly is that we have so many seniors. So we're hoping to have, because there is, as there's the huge push to get kids back into school. So we're hoping that teachers are and staff, school staff are next. We're just, waiting for the word.
He wants so badly he wants to let's just turn this into a CNN.
No.
A news.
No, if I wanted to do that, I would criticize how they're doing it. I'm saying that we, like you said, we're a bigger state than Arizona. We have so many seniors. I mean, it's Florida. We have seniors. Like every community north of Port St. Lucie is all people over 65.
Well, look, Arizona is the hub for Chicago for similar. I didn't know this when I moved here, but New York and sort of Florida have that connection here. It's Chicago,
but you're also but like you said, you're also a lot smaller. So there's.
I'd be curious. I think we are, but Arizona's a pretty big state, pretty booming. Phoenix is the 5th largest market in the country. So I don't know numbers, and I don't want to really. No, I mean, look, Look, I think next week let's debate snowbirds. Pros and cons.
I'm really, I'm hoping to get this thing soon. So,
thank you, Andrew Gruthius, everyone. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
All right, Groo, let's get to it. Cue it up. It's 5 things we are talking about this week. It's nothing worthwhile. The week that was.
The week that was.
The Week That Was is brought to you by New You Life Center, recently named by Phoenix Entrepreneur Magazine as a top 15 med spa to watch in 2021. Get to know Marie and Dr. Cynthia at www.newyoulifecenters.com or give them a call at 602-274-0068. Tell them that Moody and Groo sent you and receive a big 15% off your first service. Thank you to New You Life Center. Groo, let's start off. We skipped a week, so a lot of these stories were from 2 weeks ago, but let's get your thoughts. Brandy Glanville, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star, tweeted at the Call Me By Your Name star, Armie Hammer, late Sunday, inviting him to enjoy her rib cage. Dear at Armie Hammer, you could have my rib cage, heart emoji. How do you just keep getting hotter and hotter, she wrote. Glanville's tweet comes after Hammer's ex-girlfriend, Courtney Vukovich, exclusively told Page Six that the actor said he wants to break my rib and barbecue and eat it. She also accused Hammer of being emotionally abusive, telling us that their relationship made her feel unsafe. Paige Lorenz, who also dated Hammer, claimed Hammer used knife braiding and bruises to mark her. An attorney for Hammer has denied Lorenz's allegations, telling in a statement, "These assertions about Mr. Hammer are patently untrue. Any interactions with this person or any partner of his were completely consensual in that they were fully disclosed." Glanville immediately faced backlash for her tweet. "This tweet is deplorable. These are very serious allegations, abuse allegations against this person. You are mocking these and all victims. I've always had compassion and empathy for you, even when your behavior didn't always warrant. This has gone too far." Groo, Hammer's agency, WME, has dropped him, and the actor has stepped away from multiple projects, including the rom-com starring Jennifer Lopez called Shotgun Wedding. Hammer spoke out after leaving Shotgun Wedding, claiming the claims are bullshit. "I'm not responding to these bullshit claims, but in light of the vicious and spurious online attacks against me, I cannot in good conscience now leave my children for 4 months to shoot a film in the Dominican Republic." Groo, thoughts on this delicious, tasty item?
Well, it just shows you that social media now really controls the world. And I think that's wrong. I don't see. Number one, I don't quite understand what this whole thing is about. Sounds to me like somebody is getting his life turned upside down because of some private conversations he had with.
Could I give you my take on it and let you?
Yeah,
respond?
Go ahead.
So I guess this Armie Hammer, who I'm familiar with, I don't know his filmography. I know he's a fairly big time actor. A couple of women have come out and really weird stuff like cannibalistic fantasies and really sort of odd, weird, abusive kind of deal.
Cannibalism,
of course,
cannibalism is hot, man. What's wrong with that?
Okay, sure. I agree with you in the sense. I don't know what you gave a quick statement, but I'm assuming are you sort of leading to that social media is quick to interact and now quick to interact. I don't know if that's the right word. And now he's kind of he's had no chance to really properly defend himself, and he's lost jobs and gigs. And
I think what it's gotten rid of, or what it's taken precedence over, is due process. Because, for example, for a guy like this, and I'm not that familiar with him too. I've seen it. He was the Lone Ranger. He was. I saw that movie, Call Me By Your Name. He's good, but I think that for him to lose representation, for him to lose jobs, I don't buy that he walked away from the job to be with his kids. I think he's losing work because of it. there's such a thing in the country as due process, and it's not limited to him. We've seen every day, it seems like somebody says something bad on Twitter, now they should resign. Now they should be kicked out of this or kicked out of that. Like, what happened to due process? If you're found guilty, if you've committed some kind of atrocity or a crime, you have a hearing, you get, say, yes, you did it, no, you didn't, yes, this should happen, no, this shouldn't happen, and then the repercussions. But it seems like the punishments are preceding these things. So this is just another example of that. Now, do I care much about this guy personally? No. I mean, but I would defend his right to defend himself before getting his livelihood taken away from him. He didn't kill anybody. He's pressing buttons on a frickin' phone.
No, I mean, what's wrong with a little niblet of a rib? Come on.
Well, I mean, but nothing at all. But it's now people. There's a whole debate about freedom of speech in the United States. A lot of people get it wrong. They feel like if they're banned from Twitter, that means their freedom of speech is getting taken away. That's not the case. The case is that Twitter's a private company. They can censor whoever they want without any repercussions. Freedom of speech is protection from the government, as you know. You don't get arrested for saying what you say. But guess what? If you're going to start losing jobs and losing everything else and livelihood because of something it's getting to be too much.
Let me just add, and that's one to grow on. Okay, so
it's like wait.
Can I make 2 points?
Yes, go.
Okay. So my first question to you is: do you think Armie Hammer will ever work again in any kind of major Hollywood? I'm not talking about some B movie. You think Armie Hammer will still have a career or a flourishing career?
I hope so.
Already, it may just be done.
I hope so, only because it will show us that we're not going to fall victim to this kind of what?
No, I don't think he's. I hate to say that. I think he's done.
Maybe. No, I probably agree with you. I think he's probably done. I said I hope he's not done because I don't like the fact that he's being taken down by this kind of stuff. It's kind of the same thing with Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey lost everything because of innuendo. Like, nobody's proven anything about that guy, and yet he can't get a job because somebody said something happened. There was no due process there. It's like people are losing shit because just people talk. And I could say what I want. I could say what I want about you right now and ruin your life, and you can do that to me. It's so simple, and that's unacceptable to me. So I hope he gets his livelihood back.
Agreed. I think to your other point about Twitter, it is a private company. I think the problem is people don't see, perhaps, and they are a private company, so I mean they could do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But they don't see a fair or consistent application.
I'm sure they don't. Neither does Facebook. Neither do any of these things. Neither does Parler. Neither do any of these things. They're all one-sided, but they're not. The biggest problem is, like you said, and like we both said, they're not public companies. Yet people are looking at them as if they are a public trust. Television is not a public trust. Okay.
Okay, but I believe, and I do want to move on because I don't want this to be something worthwhile, but I believe, though, social media companies do have protections under federal law, and I think Trump had wanted to repeal something like they can't be sued. It's similar to baseball with antitrust exemption. So there are, I think, laws or statutes on the book that protects them, but they're a private company, and I think people say that there's not a consistent application, that they'll go ahead and bear down on one perhaps not the other when there's similar circumstances. I'm just throwing that out there.
But all right, so I'll just end this with one question. Number one, now I'm not a business guy, so I don't know how this works. But technically, they're not private companies because they are traded on the stock market. So they're really not. But okay. I think there's some murky waters there. But do you think that that social media sites like Twitter and all these things, they should be held to the same standards of truth and unbiased that newspapers should be, but are not?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, but it's so moot because that era is done, Andy. I mean, I think I've said I've said newspapers, cable news outlets. I actually would prefer if a Fox said, "We are your conservative news source," and CNN said, "We are your
liberal
Democratic or liberal." I think it would really. Let's pull the curtain over that.
And you know what my favorite things on both of the, and I would say I watch probably CNN more, but I do watch a bit of Fox, and I love it on both networks when they go after their own. I love it when Fox goes after the people on their side who screw up, and I love it when like Jake Tapper on CNN was bashing Biden yesterday, and I was like, okay, this is refreshing. This is what we need. We need to be, at least show some kind of unbiased to show that you're going to call the truth out. So both networks have shown certain, willingness to do that. To be fair, I don't even know what I call them. What would you call the difference between someone like Walter Cronkite and Tucker Carlson? Tucker Carlson is not a news guy.
I think Walter Cronkite was, again, this is you just hit me up with this. I think obviously Walter Cronkite was your classic journalist who I think in his mind he believed he was reporting the news unfiltered. I think guys like Tucker Carlson and what's the guy like on CNN? Don Lemon. They're opinion pieces. Right. They're opinions.
So they're the editorial guys. But each network should have a guy like that from the other side. Like I would love, even though Tucker Carlson used to work for CNN, I would love to see Carlson and Lemon switch places. And
I think that I agree with you. I think back in the day they did have one or two people, but. Maybe they got shot at. I mean, look.
Yeah.
Let's
talk about.
Fun
I think we both.
Let's talk about fun stuff like guys eating ribs and braiding their girlfriends with knives. I'm joking. But Army Hammer. It was good to know you, Army. We will probably see you on some B movie in 15 years from now when you're bald and. 15 pounds.
Hell returns to Frogtown, starring Army.
Yeah, like a Nick Cage run. Groo up next. Sad news. Mary Wilson, outspoken co-founder of Motown's legendary girl group, The Supremes, died. She was 76. Her longtime publicist Jay Schwartz confirmed that she passed away suddenly Monday at her home in Las Vegas. Her cause of death has yet to be announced. Mary Wilson Groo launched the iconic pop and soul trio, famed for its silky, layered vocals and chic, synchronized choreography with Diana Ross and Florence Ballard after signing with Motown in 1961 when she was just 15 years old. Diana Ross tweeted Tuesday morning, "I have so many wonderful memories of our time together in the Supremes. The Supremes will always live on in our hearts." Mary Wilson, a 1988 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee, was also legendary for sticking with her groundbreaking group long after the breakout lead singer Diana Ross left for a solo career in 1970 and fighting a hard-won legal battle for artist royalty rights, which she detailed in her bombshell 1986 memoir, Dream Girl, My Life as a Supreme. Groo, the Supremes officially disbanded by Motown in 1977. Mary Wilson grew up in Detroit's Brewster Douglas housing project, and at the age of 12, she began her superstar path in music, meeting Ross and Ballard, in which she formed the group that would serve as a sister act to the Primes, a male act featuring Paul Williams and Eddie Kendricks, future stars of Motown's The Temptations. Groo, listen to this. Some of these songs. The Supremes' first #1 million-selling song, "Where Did Our Love Go," was released June 17th, 1964. It would be followed with the first of 5 consecutive chart toppers with "Baby Love," "Come See About Me," "Stop in the Name of Love," and "Back in My Arms Again." Following in quick succession, the Supremes also recorded the hit songs "You Can't Hurry Love," "Up the Ladder to the Roof," and "Love Child," all while shattering boundaries for women of color on stage and off. Groo, Diana Ross launched her solo career in 1968. They had their swan song with Ross, "Someday We'll Be Together," topped the pop and R&B charts in December 1969. Groo, throughout the years, Wilson sparred publicly in the press with Diana Ross, whom she always pointedly referred to by her birth name, Diane. "I'm sure people will have their own opinions about that, but I really don't care," said Wilson, defending herself in a 1986 interview with Jet Magazine. "My main thing is that when I was in the group, I maintained my position, and I didn't step into Diane's position. I'm no longer in the group now." Groo, they tried a reunion in 2000. The Supremes reunion tour fell spectacularly apart after a long and ugly battle over Wilson's paycheck, whom she argued was insulting in comparison to her bandmate Diana Ross. Groo, hitting you up on this one. Thoughts on the passing of the Supremes' Mary Wilson?
Well, my short stint as Diana Ross's replacement in the Supremes, I had nothing but good relations with Mary Wilson. We had some great times together, made some beautiful music.
That's hot.
Yeah, very hot. It was. But yeah, look, you said it all. Forgetting all the, the usual backstage whatevers that go on with every group. Just the songs that you mentioned. It's amazing. Even kids today, they know these songs, even if they can't name them. So they don't know who Mary Wilson was from A Hole in the Wall, but when they hear the music that she was responsible for with Diana Ross, that's education right there. This was Phil Spector's Wall of Sound. The Supremes, we say so many bands started this, started that. Well, the Supremes started something because their kind of music inspired so much, whether it was Tina Turner, to Ike and Tina Turner, even some of our favorites like Billy Joel and Bruce Springsteen have used their sound. What group was Darlene Love part of a one of those groups? Because
That's
she's got that question. Because I know
I want to say I think Darlene was a solo act,
maybe, but then she took what the Supremes did and did her own thing with it. So the passing of Mary Wilson is, look, she wasn't that old. She was like 73. That's not old these days. So it's sad to see some of these people disappearing at ages before they really should.
Yeah, she was 76 group.
76. That's still young these days, I would say. But her contribution to the music industry is up there with I would say Diana Ross, Aretha Franklin. They invented a kind of music with a lot of help from their friends, but she is no less responsible for it than the ones who get more credit. So Godspeed, Mary Wilson.
Yeah, I found it interesting. They really hammered home and I know you mentioned the backstage stuff, but she really had it sounds like real hard feelings with Diana Ross. We know Diana Ross became a megastar beyond the Supremes, and then what was interesting was I never knew this, but there was a 2000 Supremes reunion tour, which could have been a really nice last hurrah, but from what I read, Mary Wilson felt like the money she was offered as compared to Diana Ross was insulting, and it never happened. And I always find that to be sad, when we talk about these, and we'll talk about Chicago, who had their own, axe to grind between them. But it's always sad when money, ego, all that stuff, gets in the way of good art and getting the fans, giving these artists one final hurrah and letting in the fans to enjoy, a final run.
And you know what? Most of the time, and I'll bet it was the same here, it was like an Eagles thing. It was like a Henley Fry thing. Even if the money is there and available, I can picture Diana Ross or Diane Ross, but I could picture her. I could picture her insisting that she get paid more than Mary Wilson. So I don't think it was the actual number that Mary Wilson wasn't getting. It was the fact that Diana Ross probably, and this is complete hearsay, but I can totally see her saying she would probably think that she should be getting more than Mary Wilson and everybody else. The name of the group at the time was Diana Ross and the Supremes. You got to give her that. But that's what it usually is, because the money's there. If the fans are there, the money's there. It's available. It's all about ego. And that's what sucks. Just like with Glenn Fry and Don Henley, and with the Eagles, we've talked about it. No matter how much money there was, they felt that they were owed more than everybody else. And if the other people in the band didn't like it, they could fuck off. And that's what one of them did. So I think it's the same scenario here. And it is very sad when that happens. It's like just make music. Come on.
All right, Andy, let's transition. Take a breath. Speaking of music, speaking of pop culture, here it is. Groo, on Wednesday, it was revealed that working-class rock legend Bruce Springsteen was arrested late last year at a New Jersey national park for drunk driving. The Department of the Interior revealed last Wednesday. The news emerged just days after the rocker appeared in a car commercial during the Super Bowl. Springsteen, 71, was cooperative throughout the process of being arrested November 14th at Jersey's Gateway National Recreation Area, locally known as Sandy Hook, noted the statement from the National Park Service spokesman. The Thunder Road singer was cited for driving while intoxicated, reckless driving, and consuming alcohol in a closed area. News of Springsteen's arrest came just days after the musician starred in his very first Super Bowl commercial. The Jeep ad featured, Springsteen calling for Americans to find unity after a divisive year, as there's numerous shots of him driving a Jeep CJ5 across country and city roads. In Springsteen's autobiography, Groo, Born to Run, which was published in 2016, the musician admitted that he avoided drugs and didn't try alcohol until he was 22, in part because of how drinking had affected his father. Springsteen has been lauded by his fans and bandmates for healthy living habits, such as hitting the gym and avoiding drugs and alcohol, which they credit for giving him stamina to perform hour-long concerts for decades into his career. Groo, after I took the notes, we've had some other articles with a few more details, but let's talk about it. Andrew, the boss cited for DWI. The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, Springsteen has never hidden the fact that he loves his alcohol. He drinks a lot. He's not an alcoholic, but he drinks. And that's very. That's
what
very
is
obvious.
this? A Springsteen? What is this? A Springsteen Insider podcast now?
No, I just think some of the articles were hailing him as somebody who was like anti-drugs and alcohol. He wasn't anti-alcohol. He's always been a heavy drinker, but what he did.
I thought he was he was known to be kind of a gym health guy.
You could be a health nut and still like your alcohol. Like watch any of these videos. He's always taking shots. And that's what happened here. He rode his motorcycle into a place where I don't think you're allowed to ride a motorcycle or drive cars in an area, and you're also not allowed to consume alcoholic beverages. And yet, big rock stars riding his thing in this area, and some fans see him. They want to take pictures, and they give him a couple of tequila shots, and a ranger sees it, comes over, and the rest is history. You can't do that, Bruce. You're a dick. Like, why would you do that? Why would you, I understand you want to do what you want to do, but if you're a public figure, you gotta watch yourself. Especially, they're going to come after you because he's such a liberal icon. You know that the other side's going to come after him, as they should.
Stop it.
No, I agree. I agree.
I'm not. Hold on, because I subscribe sometimes to the other side, and I am by no means. I am not a fan of anyone targeting anyone for their political affiliation. I don't want it for my side, or I don't want it for another side.
But what I'm saying is, if this is the way it's going to be with each side targeting the others, okay, Springsteen is always. But
why does it have to be that way? Could it not have just been?
You're right. It doesn't have to. But since it is, you have to be careful. Since it is.
Now he's a celebrity. Now, could he have been targeted because he's a celebrity? Yes. I mean, do I think a state trooper is going, "Oh my God, he's a liberal icon"? I maybe. No, but maybe not.
I don't think it had anything to do with that. I think the reaction, like if you look at the cover of the New York Post and then the cover of the Daily News the next day, Daily News probably mentioned it on page 40, while it was the front page of the New York Post. And
Bruce Springsteen is a massive star.
Right.
I mean,
but
oh,
it's no. You come on. But of course, look. If it was Ted Nugent who got busted doing this, the Daily News would have put him on the front page, and the New York Post probably would have buried it. They're both guilty of this. Both sides.
Well, here's my thing. Looking at your comparison, I would say, sure, political affiliations aside, Ted Nugent is nowhere near the star. Okay. So I could see where a paper, no matter what their slant is, putting a Ted Nugent article towards the middle or back because he's just not a star.
All right,
Bruce Springsteen is a major. He's a major rock and roll icon. I mean, he's right up there with the Beatles. I mean, he's a major star. So,
but I think he is also he's also fodder for the right, because he does all this stuff for the left. He is very not in the middle. He's very. He played the inauguration for Biden. He didn't play the inauguration for Trump. He played the Biden. That's who he is. So of course, if he fucks up, the other side's going to go after him because he has involved himself in politics. So okay. I think it was very irresponsible of him to do what he did. Whatever it was. You don't agree?
I don't necessarily believe it was politically motivated. It might be
I don't think what he did was politically motivated. I think the way the story has been covered, the different angles of the story have been politically charged. But let's put that aside. It was a big. Hold on. It was a big story for a couple of days, and now you haven't read anything. All right, but let's put the let's just end this and put the politics aside for a moment. I still think it was a very irresponsible thing for him to do, and I'm disappointed that he did it. If only because it's right near his home, and he knew the rules of that particular park, and he shouldn't have done it.
I mean, stuff came out. Apparently he blew like well below the legal limit. But however, from what I understand, when you're in a state park or a federal park, you cannot have an open container. Period.
That's right.
I don't know about driving or
I don't think he was driving. I think he was going to drive, but he just. But it wasn't. So it wasn't really driving while intoxicated. It was like DBI, driving before. Or I don't know. But either way, why put yourself in that situation? That's just stupid. That's irresponsibility, I think.
He'll be fine. He already got the.
I'm sure he's fine. But
you already got the $multi-million attorney, and
but when people you and I admire, we can be disappointed in them, and I'm disappointed that he would do that. That's not who that's not who we want him to be. Then again, when Billy Joel wraps his motorcycle around a tree, the same thing happens. Except nobody really goes after him because he's not even close to getting politically involved as others are.
Okay, but the thing is, the Billy Joel's car accidents and motorcycle have been covered, and Saturday Night Live did a sketch goofing on him.
They did. You're right. I remember that.
Horatio Sanz. I mean, so he got goofed on. I mean, Is it a different level? Bruce is a lot more political than Billy. So I mean, whatever.
Yeah, but don't go preaching morality and then I don't know. I wasn't happy about it.
He doesn't preach morality.
He kind of does.
Maybe he got drunk after he saw the commercial. I don't know. I mean,
that's the funny part about this whole thing. Literally the day after and in the commercial you see him taking a shot. Did you see the commercial? When he's outside the car, he's taking a shot of something. I don't think it was NyQuil.
Yeah, he should take a shot after that commercial. Anyway,
I'm sure he'll be fine, and we'll still be the first in line to buy tickets for when he goes on tour.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
Such hypocrites, such hypocrites.
Oh no,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, look, you could love an artist and not be happy or like a little piece of them. I mean, listen, it's as we say, it's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of Nice.
Yes,
you have to separate the art from
very good point
from the
there.
individual.
Yeah.
So, all right, Groo, let's move on. Good discussion, Groo. Let me hear your thoughts on this one. Another death. Larry Flynt has died. Flynt, who was 78 at the time of his death, died at his home in Los Angeles, according to his brother. The entrepreneur, who was largely known for creating the Hustler brand, was also a fierce advocate for free speech. Flynt first launched Hustler magazine in 1974 and later grew his publication into an empire that would include multiple magazines, TV channels, and even a casino. Because of the content of his magazine, Zip, Flynt was often involved in legal battles and facing obscenity charges. While leaving one court hearing in 1978, Larry Flynt was famously shot by serial killer Joseph Paul Franklin, leaving him in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Flynt was later involved in obscenity cases in both 1988 and 1998, according to Variety magazine, and tried to launch a career in politics with a 1984 run for president, and later, in 2003, a run for the governor of California. Over the course of his life, Larry Flynt was married 5 times and had 5 daughters and 1 son. While he was well known for creating and shaping the Hustler name and brand, Flynt was also known for the film People vs. Larry Flynt, in which he was portrayed by Woody Harrelson and earned an Oscar nomination for his role. The 1996 drama tells the story of Larry Flynt's fight for free speech and covers the 3 decades of Flynt's life, including his battle in court against Reverend Jerry Falwell. The film's case is based in part of the Hustler magazine versus Falwell Supreme Court case. Groo, thoughts on the passing of Mr. Larry Flynt?
Well, I don't cry. I don't cry very easily. But I was almost moved to tears on this one. Larry Flynt was responsible for so many things throughout my childhood. Where to begin?
You know what? It was a lot of this. Evan, what are you doing in there? I'm brushing my hair. Open the door.
You've been brushing your hair for an hour. Oh, and you have no hair.
Right.
Oh, yes, I do. Hey, look, Larry Flynt was a publishing legend. Hustler magazine, is doubles in my apartment as wallpaper, as you know, as you've seen. Look, he also it's like what, 75, 76? Not that old.
He was 78 at the time of his death.
Still these days, kind of young. Not exactly the picture of health.
No,
but I don't think is Hustler magazine still out there?
Shockingly enough, Groo, I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm shocked that I don't either. But look, a life, I would call that getting shot aside, I would call that a life well lived.
Yeah, he definitely lived a life.
Yeah, he definitely lived a life. So, I mean, there's not much to say. I haven't heard his name before this in 10, 15 years. So, but Godspeed, rest in peace, Larry Flynt. You did some great great things, and you probably did some not so great things, just like everybody else. So
I think that was a good point, Groo, and I will only add my sweet little boy thanks you, Larry Flint, for many adventures in my mind and in my hand. Thank you.
Hefner in 2020 and Flint in 21, and then who else did we lose a couple of years ago? Hirschfeld, was that his name? Who's the guy?
Well, I think Hirschfeld was the mayor. The guy from Screw magazine. He was on Howard back in like the 90s.
Yeah, Screw.
I actually forget his name, but I don't know. What's next? Please, I hope Ginger Lynn or she's still alive, or I don't know.
Yeah,
anyway, let me shut up.
It's like we got Screw, we got Hustler, we got Playboy, and we got PWI. I mean, what do we have left?
Yeah, what's next? Stu Sachs? Stu Sachs is going to be gone?
Oh, God, Stu Sachs. My goodness.
Yeah, that was back in the day. Groo, last one. Groo, this week I got this final article. A Jeopardy contestant thoroughly embarrassed herself when she recalled a, quote, troubling experience of accidentally riding New York City subway to Jamaica, Queens. She ended up in Queens, Groo, and she was scared. On last Monday's episode of Jeopardy, interim host Ken Jennings interrupted the game to introduce viewers to contestant Karen Elstad, a Frankfort, Kentucky native who works as a chaplain in Georgia. You had a troubling experience as a 15-year-old in Queens, New York, explained Jennings. What happened? Yes, I was doing a summer program. I was in Manhattan, and I didn't know a single person in New York City. Explained the Jeopardy contestant, so I would spend my time riding the subway around the city. Elstad explained that one day she wasn't, quote, paying attention and accidentally found herself in Jamaica, Queens. I had no idea how I got there. This was very much pre-Uber, pre-smartphone, she added. So a terrifying moment, just me in abject fear. The author of the article goes on to question, so the author questions, Groo, just how difficult would it have been for her to exit the car, walk to the opposite platform, and then get a train going the opposite direction? Or why not just ask someone for directions? The author says, why do you, a white woman named Karen, feel afraid in a neighborhood that is predominantly non-white? And why do you feel comfortable saying that before a national televised Jeopardy audience? That might be the bigger issue. Jeopardy viewers picked up on all of this and more and was quick to blast Elstad, as Groo mentioned, on social media. Her name is actually Karen, and she lives up to it, wrote one viewer. Sure glad you lost, wrote another viewer. Groo, thoughts on Jeopardy Karen?
Just you got to remember where you are and what you're doing, man. I mean, you might be in a little room with 50 people watching, but you got millions watching all over the world. Whatever you do is going to be remembered forever, and will always be able. It's like the Fifth Amendment. I think it was the Fifth Amendment. It better be the Fifth Amendment. The Miranda rights. It's like anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Well, anything you say can and will be used against you in life at this point. So you gotta be so careful of that stuff. And it's funny that you mentioned this story because I thought you were going to talk about the weakest link, but evidently I'm.
Is that show still on?
I stumbled across it the other night while I was making dinner. My lovely spaghetti alla vodka.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. So I was in the kitchen and I heard it on the TV. Jane Lynch from the show Glee. She hosts it. And it just had it on. Just sometimes I just like hearing the questions. And I swear to God, while I'm standing there making dinner and I'm hearing the questions and the answers, the contestants on this particular show had to have been the most brain dead. I can't even remember the questions they were being asked. All I know is that I knew the answer to every single one of them, and they didn't. Like, it was a question like this, okay? This wasn't one of the questions, but this is the level of stupidity. I think one of the, it would have been like, what rock and roll legend is known as the Piano Man? And one person would say Eddie Van Halen. And I think I dropped a glass and broke it because I was so freaked out by that. And nobody there knew it. That wasn't an actual question, but it was questions like that, and it was so. I'm having so much trouble. There was one absolutely ridiculous one, and I'm trying to remember. It was like, what's the capital of New Jersey? And someone said like Jersey City, something like that, And it was it was so it was so embarrassing. It really was.
To go back to this little quick piece that we're discussing real briefly. Reading this, could it also have been? I mean, she's from Kentucky. She lives in Georgia. Could it just be that she's 15, 16 in the city and just not used to that, crazy compact hustle and bustle, and maybe she's just nervous that I've been nervous going into an area that I'm not familiar with, and I didn't think it was anything to do with the people in the area. It's just you don't know where you are. There's hustle and bustle.
Yeah,
the city can be very intimidating just upon itself.
You couldn't be more right. And people are, it's like they're calling things racism that aren't racism. They're calling things, like I'll give you an example. When we went to WrestleMania, in New Orleans, all right, I was nervous because I'd never been to New Orleans, and the only the only thing I really knew extensively about it was when my brother was there and almost got killed by someone who, I think you know the story. He was in a bar and then he took a walk down Bourbon Street and somebody literally out of nowhere stabbed him. And that was my feeling about New Orleans. So I was nervous.
That's tough.
It's not a racist thing. It's not anything to do with anything. It's whenever you're in an unfamiliar surrounding, you're going to feel intimidated. You're going to be scared. You're going to look at strangers, especially when you're that young. You're going to look at strangers and be weary of them because in this day and age, imagine growing up as a kid right now, being how do I put this? Not trusting people more than you trust people. When we grew up, we trusted everybody. We were not wary of things. We were not raised that way in that kind of world. This kind of world, especially with and it goes back to social media and TV and paranoia. It's a fear-based society, so we're taught to fear everything. So imagine being 15 years old on your own for the first time in a big city that you don't even know. You're going to have to ask somebody which train to take, and you're afraid of who to ask. You got to find you want to find the person who looks and sounds as much like you as possibly can, just so you can feel comfortable. That's not racism. That's a product of the way people are raised in fear, and fear, as you know, is a breeding ground for racism. And so that when I hear that story, that's a sad story because I don't blame the girl. I blame what society has done to this girl.
Well, my only point was I don't know if that's commenting that you end up in Jamaica, Queens, and you were scared or nervous. I don't know if that's necessarily a racist thought. That could be like you said.
But
now,
people will spin it that way, though. That's the thing. People are going to spin it that way.
Calm down. I understand, and I don't disagree with you. I'm on board with you, buddy. A couple of years ago, we were meeting up in New York for our annual November trip, and Marie and I had flown into LaGuardia, and we had to hop on a train or a subway to meet Craig. And I haven't been in New York in years, and I don't know how to read those maps. And I remember I went up to the customer service agent booth, and it was closed. And luckily, we asked somebody, and they directed us to the correct train, and we were able to meet Craig. But it's nervous. It is intimidating. It's for somebody who's not used to it. That's my only point. I believe you agree with me.
And I do agree with you 100%. And you know what's interesting about this? And I'm sorry to drag this on, but a memory just came into my head. The media that people watch today, as far as movies and stuff. Okay, movies and official media like that, they go to great lengths to avoid stereotypes, don't they? These days,
it's definitely on the forefront.
They go to great lengths to destroy to avoid anything that people can point. Oh, that's kind of racist, or you need to have this or that or the other thing. The movies that we grew up on, okay, went in exactly the opposite direction. And yet, we were not raised to fear anything. I'm thinking of one scene in National Lampoon's Vacation when they're driving through the slum, and he asks the pimp, how to get there, and the guy says, "Go fuck yourself," and then the other guy is like giving him these weird directions. And what do they all have in common? They're all African American, and they're in this, and that today, if that came out today, it wouldn't make it. It wouldn't be allowed, But yet we were raised on that kind of stuff. Yet we saw it for what it was, comedy, and not fear. And yet, so it's interesting that today kids are raised and their media is so filtered, as I guess it should be, because, times have changed. And I know that, but their media is so filtered, and yet they're so much more frightened than we were, and so much more, dare I say, prejudiced than we were. Is that?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to go there, but what I would say to your point is, I'm not sure how I mentioned a thing about Jeopardy and Groo's going into National Lampoon Vacation, but
but do you know what I?
Your point about that. What I would say is your point about that is. I think we've said it on the podcast, I love racial humor when done well and not done in a mean way. I love it on all sides. But yes, it's a different time and a different place. My only point was I thought that young lady maybe could have been weird, but I thought maybe I could see where somebody from Kentucky is saying, "Hey, I'm 15, 16 in New York City. I end up in Jamaica, Queens on a train. And it was very scary and intimidating, and not necessarily refer or reflect on racist.
You could just say
racist notion.
I might have if I was one of the pre-interview people for that show, I might have changed it to New York City instead of Jamaica, Queens.
Yeah, well, they let it fly, and they got an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, because you don't go on national television and tell that story.
Yeah, I agree with that. That I definitely agree with. You got to be aware of your audience. Yeah. Speaking of audience, Groo, let us scale back to our last podcast. It was Eric Bischoff, the WCW years, and the Monday Night Wars. It was a fun trip down pro wrestling memory lane as we discussed the following, Groo. The very beginnings of Eric Bischoff in pro wrestling with the AWA. Eric joins WCW as the C-Show announcer and has a meteoric rise to the top. Bischoff signs the Hulkster and breaks many of the standards and norms of the pro wrestling game. The New World Order, the WWF fights back with the Attitude Era. WCW hangs in there with older stars. Goldberg versus Hogan on free TV. Bischoff is gone, but is he gone for good? Groo, listeners did chime in with some comments. Eric Bischoff, WCW, NWO, and of all things, plastic surgery. So, Groo, let's get to it. It's time for Viewer Mail.
Letters. We got your letters. We got your letters every day. Mailman Ding Dong, give me a letter today.
Nothing Worthwhile Viewer Mail is sponsored by New You Life Center. Phoenix Entrepreneur Magazine named him in the top 15 med spas to watch in 2021. Life-changing solutions tailored to your goals. Check them out at www.newyoulifecenters.com or give them a call at 602-274-0068. Tell them Moody and Groo sent you and receive a big 15% off your first service. A big thank you to New You Life Center. Courtesy of our Facebook fan page. Here are the comments referencing my girlfriend Marie commenting on work that celebrities have done. Does Marie do that often? Comment on work that passersby have done. I would say that she doesn't do it very often. She has specifically referenced Springsteen, which the next comment was Marie mentioned Springsteen has work done. What did she notice about his appearance? I believe she said for sure he's had Botox and hair plugs. Does she do it about a lot of celebrities? No, not really. But once in a while, we'd be watching something, and she'll say, "Look at the lines," or "Look at the hairline," or something like that. Groo, any comments on the whole celebrity plastic surgery and Springsteen work that he's had done?
I think it's human nature. We do it too. We do it to the same people. It's obvious that Springsteen has had Botox and hair plugs and dyes his hair. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I agree with you. I agree. I think it's not so stark. I think whatever work he's done is done well. And he looks like a super fit, trim 71-year-old.
Yeah,
and I hope to look like him when I get to that age, too.
Exactly. And that's one thing you can't fake. You can't fake the shape that you're in. You know? Right?
No,
you can't fake that. So you give him that. But look, 5 years from now, I'll probably start wearing a toupee, and anybody who wants
you're not.
and anybody who wants to make fun of me for it, go for it, because I deserve it. Because I've always said, I am such a hypocrite with this. I have always said that, guys, just age gracefully. Just let it go. You don't have to cover anything up. And as I'm getting older and shit starts falling off, I'm taking the other side, because I feel younger. I feel very youthful. I look like a 75-year-old man, but I feel youthful. So
no. I agree with you. That's in part why I decided to shave my head, because I didn't like that patchy, wispy kind of deal. Now, what I would say to that is, I would consider, I wouldn't do it, but if I was a guy looking to do it, I would consider doing plugs or something, but not a toupee. I would do surgery to fill it in.
Well, maybe. Is there anything that Marie can do for me with New You?
Yeah. We'll talk. Yeah.
All right, because maybe I'll take a trip to. All right, now we're good, but I still can't hear myself. Oh my God, we're recording. Everybody, hi, we're still here. Just hang on a second. All right, sorry about that, everybody. We just had a little technical glitch. So, Evan, continue. I'm sorry about that.
All right, viewer commented, good Bischoff coverage. I remember him from his final days with the AWA. He clearly had a good vision for the business. The NWO storyline was the best of all time. I do agree. Well, I call it number 2 behind McMahon Austin. But his teams lacked creativity, didn't allow them to evolve, and they relied heavily on older wrestlers past their prime. Plus, his obsession to beat McMahon ultimately worked against him. You praised him for breaking that wall and calling out his competition on a nightly basis. But he took it too far in '99 with not one but 2 references to WWF programming. Quote, that'll put butts in the seats and everyone turned to dial back for good. If he only focused on growing his own product rather than beating Vince, WCW could still be on today. Wrestling is not the same without this level of competition. It was good for the biz. McMahon taking over WCW was a sad day for the biz. I'll just say, in sad day perhaps, but an invest. All right, wrestling is not the same without this level of competition. It was good for the biz. McMahon taking over WCW was a sad day for the biz. I said sad day, but perhaps an inevitable one. Groo, thoughts on the readers' comments on our Eric Bischoff coverage?
Well, I think I disagree. I mean, I wouldn't call it a sad day for anything. I think it was...
I disagree, too. I said an inevitable one. But no, on the podcast, we both thought that was a tremendous day. I mean, WWF put its foot down. And,
Yeah, and WCW ran its course. Their product was trash. I mean, it was true garbage at the time. So it was good that now we could focus on just one. Now, what they did with that focus was, that's for another time. But no, I completely disagree with that statement.
It's funny. The only other thing I'll comment on was, they talked about praising. You praised him for breaking that wall, and Groo and I spoke a couple of days ago to set up the podcast. I was doing laundry. I was listening to the Bischoff podcast, enjoying it, and Groo, you called him like a revolutionary. And actually, I agree with that, because he did break, for better or worse, he did break all those norms. I mean, all those things that we knew about wrestling, the kayfabe, the not mentioning the other organization, a true revolutionary.
I agree 100. I couldn't agree more. And we covered it there. We covered it there. So.
And then finally, one reader wrote, the title of this podcast is aptly named. Once you started talking about Eric Bischoff, I turned that bitch off.
I remember. I read that. That was Steven, wasn't it?
All right, can we kayfabe and not break off the fourth wall and expose our viewership?
Oh, okay. That was.
I'm joking.
That was Bulk. That was Bulk Bogan.
Yes. All right, well, let's move on, Groo. Today's Nothing Worthwhile podcast, titled Chicago Breaks Up, Peter Cetera Leaves the Band, is sponsored by New You Life Center. Phoenix Entrepreneur Magazine named them in the top 15 med spas to watch in 2021. No goal is too big. No journey is too far. To Cynthia, thank you to New You Life Center. Groo, you okay? You ready to roll?
Ready to go.
All right, Groo, as we start off, keeping it 500 words or less, when I say the rock band Chicago, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I don't have 500 words. I have 2 words. Peter Cetera.
That's simple, huh?
It really is. And, because that's how I was introduced to Chicago through that era of music. The Cetera hit machine of like the early to mid 80s. And then only afterwards did I realize that songs that I knew, like 25 or 6 to 4 and Saturday in the Park, those hits, I thought it was 2 different bands. So to me, when I think of Chicago, the first voice and image that comes into my head is the bad wig of Peter Cetera.
Wow, I didn't even know Peter Cetera wore a wig, so I have to look at that.
He didn't back then. I mean, he's got to be in his late 60s, early 70s now. And if you saw him now, the head of hair he has, I mean, it looks like Braxton. It's not. It's not. I don't see anything real in that. But no, he's what I think of when I think of Chicago.
Yeah, I think of an infusion of the horn sound into sort of that modern rock. And, I was thinking about it. Really, 3 artists have really been able to sort of infuse that horn section into their music.
Let me see if I could figure out who you're thinking of. Who else you're thinking of?
Well, one of them is Chicago. So give me the other 2.
Chicago. Is it a group or artist?
One is a group. One is an artist. That's going to give it away.
I don't know. I'm having trouble. Horns. Parliament Funkadelic?
I guess you could make a case, but it's in that similar vein.
Sly and the Family Stone, then.
I was thinking of Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Really? All right. Okay. And artist. And then artist, maybe horns. Artist. Horn section artist. Somebody I have seen. Somebody I would know. You would know the answer to that.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
I mean, Springsteen uses horns sparingly. All right, Billy Joel. He uses.
No, I was thinking more of Phil Collins.
Yeah. I should have known that. I should have known. You know why I didn't say that? Because when I think of Phil Collins, I inch toward Genesis. I don't think of him solo first. I think Genesis first. But yes, I've seen Phil Collins live himself once, and yeah, that horn section is front and center. You're absolutely right.
As a matter of fact, I believe I'm correct in saying this, Phil Collins, on face value, used the Earth, Wind, and Fire horns, the really? Horn section for Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yes,
I did not know that either.
I think later on he had his own horn section. All right, Groo, let me give you a little bit of
this truly is one to grow on, I have to say. We're learning.
Absolutely. Chicago was formed in 1967. They called themselves the Chicago Transit Authority.
Yeah.
They did shorten their name in 1969. Chicago Groo is famous for blending elements of classical music, jazz, R&B, and pop. The group has had a steady stream of hits throughout the 70s and 80s. In September 2008, Groo, Billboard ranked Chicago number 13 in a list of top 100 artists of all time for the Hot 100 singles. Billboard also ranked Chicago 9th on the list of 100 greatest artists of all time in terms of the Billboard 200 album chart
What number?
sales.
What number did they?
They ranked Chicago 9th.
Wow.
So actually, I wrote the success is stunning to me. I never really thought of it that way. I actually wrote, my God, the numbers and the awards are staggering for Chicago. I mean, Groo, they've had 23 gold albums, 18 platinum, 8 multi-platinum albums, 5 consecutive number one albums on the Billboard 200, 20 top 10 singles in the Billboard 100. In 1974, Groo, the group had 7 albums, its entire catalog at the time, this has to be unheard of, on the Billboard 200. I mean,
Wow.
you know, just giving you a little taste of their success. Again, that doesn't always mean culturally they're respected, but in terms of their pop success, playing on the radio, back when radio was really a major influencer, I mean, the numbers and the awards in the lists are staggering.
Which is amazing to me because they're the kind of group that, like, besides Cetera and I guess maybe Danny Seraphine, I can't name one member.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Groo, because the group formed February 15th, 1967, at a meeting involving saxophonist Walter Parazalder, guitarist Terry Kath, drummer
okay.
Danny Seraphine, trombonist James Pankow, trumpet player Lee Longnane, and keyboardist Robert Lamb. I think most people, if you know the band, you know Kath, you know Lamb, and you know Seraphine. Those are like some of the bigger names.
Yeah, I remember Kath now, but I had to think.
So the band was initially called The Big Thing, and they needed a tenor to complement their baritones, and they met a local tenor named Peter Cetera, and he was invited to join the band in 1967. So I was just saying, Groo, as far as rock tenors go, I'd say Peter Cetera is about as impressive choice as anyone else. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I'd put him up there as far as range and distinct voice. I'd put him in there with like a Steve Perry. You disagree?
No. I'm not too. I mean, when I think of high harmony, I do think of Cetera. I would agree with you with Journey. What was it? Steve Perry. And I think the other guy I think of, and I'm not saying he has any massive credibility because he's not the lead singer. I always think of Michael Anthony. You know, with Van Halen.
Yeah, and I was also. This is going to sound dumb, I think. I was going to say like Freddie Mercury as far as distinct voice, but no, they're in two completely different leagues.
I think of Freddie Mercury more as kind of operatic, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, he brought sort of opera elements into rock.
Yeah, and
you know?
he had a magical voice. Yes, I said magical, Craig. But he said he like Freddie Mercury had a magical voice, but he did not have the range that a Cetera or a Perry had. Like those guys could hit notes that no male should be able to hit in a natural world. So you know, and even though like sometimes Mercury was able to. You know, he was his voice was more comfortable in like the mid range there, so it's a bad comparison. But yeah, Cetera, his voice, one of the most distinctive voices in popular music. You cannot mistake him for anybody else, and there are very few people who can say that really.
Well, Groo, their first record in April of '69 was Chicago Transit Authority.
Yeah, '69. Oh, shut up, fat man.
It's a double album, which is very rare for a band's first release. I actually found that to be very interesting, that their first record was a double album. It went to number 17 on the Billboard 200. It sold over 1 million copies by 1970 and was awarded a platinum disc. It included the songs, Does Anybody Really Know What Time It Is?
Yeah, I remember.
Does Anybody Really Care? Beginnings. Questions 67 and 68, and I believe it's a cover, I'm a Man, which were later released as singles. For this inaugural recording effort, Groo, the group was nominated for a Grammy Award for 1969 Best New Artist of the Year.
Giggity!
Now, here's something interesting, because we're not going to do all the layers early on, but according to Peter Cetera, here's what I want to throw at you. Chicago was booked to perform at Woodstock in 1969, but promoter Bill Graham, with whom they had a contract, exercised his right to reschedule them to play at the Fillmore West on another date of his choosing, and scheduled Santana to play in the Chicago slot. And we know that performance for Santana is considered to be Santana's breakthrough gig. So I just wanted to ask you, Groo, how much more in the stratosphere could have Chicago been had they played at the legendary Woodstock?
I think they were already well known at the time. So I don't know if it would have made that much of a difference, but I see it as, when you say that, and I didn't know this story.
I didn't know it either until I read it.
I would say that Chicago, the type of music that they were playing, was not really conducive to that kind of event. You know, like when I think Woodstock, I think Crosby, Stills and Nash. I think Joan Baez. I think Dylan. I think did the Grateful Dead play Woodstock? I think they did, right?
They did.
Yeah,
they did.
I don't think of Chicago. Chicago is more.
Okay, but are you not biased by what they ended up being? Because let's be honest.
No, because I know what they were playing at that time. They were playing, the horn infused, like they were kind of a jam band at the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But
why couldn't they have fit in?
The kind of music, I feel like the crowd would have been. It's not exactly like I don't know. I don't see a lot of people popping pills at Chicago concerts. I don't know. I don't know. It just doesn't. It doesn't seem like they would have been a band to fit in on that bill. But what do I know? But it doesn't surprise me.
Listen, if Sha Na Na ended up on Woodstock, I'm pretty sure Chicago could have found a slot.
Did they really? Did Sha Na Na play?
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Then my argument is blown completely out of the water. Forget I said.
I love Sha Na. I loved Sha Na Na as a kid. I used to watch that show. John Bowser.
Yeah, Bowser. Yeah,
I thought he was so muscular, and then I watched him.
You thought he was like the toughest guy in the world. He's a 5'2" Jewish guy from from Lynbrook. Forget everything I said. Maybe it's because Bill Graham was trying to push Santana.
Perhaps
Chicago was already kind of on the map. And I guess they could have, Santana obviously benefited more. Chicago still became a massive act. They certainly didn't seem hurt by their disclusion from. Is that a word?
I understand what you're saying.
They didn't seem injured by it.
Let's run through the 70s, Groo. Chicago 2, 1970 was released. It yielded 2 top 10 hits: "Make Me Smile," number 9 in the U.S., "Color My World," both sung by Terry Kath. Robert Lamb's dynamic but cryptic "25 or 6 Too Far" was Chicago's first top 5 hit, which is a reference to a songwriter trying to write 25 or 26 minutes before 4 o'clock in the morning. Okay. The album was a commercial success, rising to number 4 on the Billboard 200, certified gold by the RIAA. The band was nominated for 2 Grammy Awards as a result of the Album of the Year, and Best Contemporary Vocal Performance by a Duo, Group, or Chorus. Groo, Make Me Smile, Color My World, 25 or 624. Not a bad way to do a sophomore effort.
Not at all. But see, those songs, it's interesting. Those songs are fun songs. You know, they're enjoyable, but they're not ones that, like, even 25 or 624, they're not ones that, like, you know, blow you away. They're great fun, but they're like, I don't know. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, for example, the first time, and this is where I'm going to be poisoned by what Chicago became later. But the first time I heard Hard to Say I'm Sorry, I was like, this is a great song. This is just a really great song. When I hear 25 or 64, I'm like, this is cool. This is hip. I like this. But it's not like, oh my God, I got to listen to that over and over and over again.
Okay.
You know?
So my take on it would be, listen, I decided somewhere in my 30s to stop being a rock and roll snob. You know, I was kind of...
I haven't.
Well, I mean, I decided that, you know, these are great songs, and I like Motley Crue, and damn it, I'm not, you know, and I'm going to enjoy my music.
Well, so do I.
What I would say is Chicago's first run in the 70s, I think does have more cultural impact and more rock and roll credibility, while their second run in the 80s was a little bit more pop, was more ear candy and a little bit more throwaway. That's just my take on it. We'll debate it a little bit more as we get to the 80s. I don't, you know, again, 25 or 6 or 4 is never going to be on my top 10 classic rock singles, but when I hear it, I have a different enjoyment. It feels a little more weighty to me. It feels a little bit more culturally rich than some of the 80s stuff in which Cetera was really pushed to the forefront. While I like that stuff, I like it for a little bit different reason.
Right, and I would say that the best compliment I could give that Chicago, that era, is that they were unbelievably consistent. Meaning that if you listen to those albums, every song is a good one. There's nothing amazing, but every song, there's no filler. Every song is a different kind of thing, is a different kind of songwriting, a different kind of music, and so their consistency through those early albums was very impressive. That you could listen to a Chicago album back to front, or front to back, excuse me, and never get bored. But you're not going to sit there and analyze and go. It's. I don't want to use the word.
No, Chicago is not Pink Floyd. I mean, you know, right. No, I agree with
right,
you.
But they're insanely consistent.
Well, let's go through some of that consistency. You got Chicago 3, released in 71. That charted number 2 on the Billboard 200. Chicago released a new record at least released one new album per year from their third album in 1971 throughout the 70s. Their band was also famous for using Roman numerals that would list each subsequent album in their canon. In 72, they released Chicago 5, which reached number 1 on both the Billboard Pop and Jazz album charts. That featured Saturday in the Park, written by Robert Lamb, which mixes everyday life and political yearning in a more subtle way. It peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100. And early 1972, Saturday in the Park. I think it was the 4th of July. Any thoughts on Saturday in the Park? I mean, that's a pretty solid song.
It's absolutely solid, and it's fun. It's nothing that I go out of my way to listen to. But you play it on a jukebox, I'll dance to it. And I'll sing to it. It's a fun karaoke song. It would be fun to hear in concert. But nice. But it's not a Born to Run. It's not a piano. It's not one that just, you know, It's good stuff. It's
all right, but here's my thing, and this is getting a little off topic. We decided to do this topic, yet I feel like every time we go over a song, you're like, it's not Bruce, it's not. But yet you've mentioned Chicago.
It's not Imagined by John Lennon.
No, but you've mentioned Chicago on other podcasts. So what's? I did ask you before. I mean, is it simply your love of all things Peter Cetera, or was there? I mean,
like I said in the beginning when you asked me, I said when I think of Chicago, it's the Chicago 16-17 era that Peter Cetera really drove with those hits. Those are my favorite songs by Chicago. The other stuff is fun. I like it, but it's not my style of rock and roll. You know.
All right, do you want me to go through? Do you want me to go through some of the other stuff, or you want me to get right to Cetera?
Well, why don't you go through some of the other stuff, because maybe there's stuff that I'm not remembering. Maybe.
All right, 1973, Chicago 6. They added a Brazilian jazz percussionist to the band, Lauder de Oliveira. You had Feeling Stronger Every Day. That was a top 10 single. And also I've Been Searching So Long, written by Pankow. Mm-hmm. Feeling Stronger Every Day was written and grew by Pankow and Cetera. During that summer of 74, they did a joint tour across America with the Beach Boys, with the two acts performing separately and then coming together for finale. And I just wrote, sounds like a Light FM dream bill. The Beach Boys and Chicago.
I actually am a big Beach Boys fan.
Good. Chicago 10. Now we're getting a little bit more.
Wait. Was Chicago 6? Was the song Just You and Me on that album?
I agree. What do you got? I have no idea.
Okay.
What I have is.
Do you know that song? Though?
Chicago 6 had the two top 10s. Oh yeah, Just You and Me.
Yeah, I like that song.
And Feeling Stronger Every Day. Chicago 6 was certified 2 times multi-platinum in 1986. In 76, you had Chicago 10 that features Cetera's ballad "If You Leave Me Now."
Love that song.
Oh, now we're getting right into Light FM territory.
Yeah.
That was a top 10. That was number 1 in the U.S. charts for 2 weeks. Charted number 1 in the UK for 3 weeks. It was Chicago's first number 1 single. It won Chicago Groo their only Grammy Award to date, 1976 Best Pop Vocal Performance by a Group, Duo, or Chorus at the 19th Annual Grammy Awards. That single was certified gold by RIAA the same year of release. Groo, funny enough, the song almost did not make the cut for the album. If You Leave Me Now was recorded at the last minute. The success of this song foreshadowed a later reliance on ballads and Cetera. This album was commercially successful as it reached number 3 on the Billboard. Any comments on If You Leave Me Now?
Yeah, I really like that song. And there's another song on this album that I think it's on this album. Another Day in New York, Another Day in New York City, I think, is on this album too. And that's a good one. And that's kind of like a Cetera type. So they are definitely going in a certain direction. I guess throwing a couple of Cetera type ballads, they were trying to test the waters, and it tested positive because those were the hits from that album.
Well, they moved on in 77 for Chicago 11, Groo, which included Cetera's ballad, "Baby, what a big surprise, right before my very eyes," which was a number 4 U.S. hit, Groo.
Yep.
Baby, What a Big Surprise, Groo, was the last top 10 hit of the decade of the 70s for Chicago. Chicago 11 performed well commercially, peaking at number 6 on the Billboard 200. Up next for the band was the death of Terry Kath and its transition. Groo, January 23rd of 1978. Terry Kath died of an accidental self-inflicted gunshot wound from a gun he thought was unloaded.
Yeah, he was cleaning
Yeah, funny enough, Groo, from what I have here, Doc Severinsen.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Funny enough.
No, but I didn't know this.
I'm kidding.
He's joking on a death.
No, you said no.
On a goddamn death segment.
I remember that.
Casey, my dog Snoodles died. Could you please play? By the way, my favorite bit is when they have Casey goes, listen to me every Saturday on WKBLS at 3 a.m. And he goes, 3 a.m.? The fuck, Marv? He calls like his manager. He's doing the promos.
Oh, God.
But again, to backtrack, Doc Severinsen, who was the band leader for The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson, at the time was a friend of the group. He visited them after Terry Kath's funeral and encouraged them to continue. And then when I had the group, the visit snapped them back and helped them to decision to carry on. Over 30 potential replacements were seen for Kath. Chicago decided upon guitarist and singer Donnie Dacus to replace Terry Kath as the guitarist.
I don't think he lasted long.
What's that now?
I don't think that guy lasted long.
He didn't. But the interesting thing was, well, not so interesting, but 1978, they released the album Hot Streets, was produced by Phil Ramone, and was the first album with a title rather than a number.
Right.
And Hot Streets grew, not too much, I don't know too much about it, except that it did not do as well as prior albums. Peaked at number 12 on the Billboard charts, which is certainly very respectable, but it was Chicago's first release to fail to make it to the top 10. This release, Groo, also moved a mark somewhat away from the jazz rock direction favored by Kath and towards a more pop sounds and ballads. Produced by Phil Ramone, of course, who we know, very big in the Billy Joel run, was the group's first studio album not to contain a top 40 hit. And the only thing I found funny was an album featuring more ballads, more pop-oriented songs does comparatively poorly for a band known for its ballads and pop-oriented hits. So, I don't know too much of the inner workings of Hot Streets, but any thoughts on Phil Ramone and this transition for the band?
I think it was a very transitional era because, remember, this is late 1970s when disco is starting to become like the big rave, Saturday Night Fever, and this album, it's definitely this album. They had that song "Little Miss Lovin'," which was with the Bee Gees, on that album. I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I think they were trying to figure out. You know what? It seems like throughout all their early years, they were trying to figure out who they were as a group. And all these albums are like trying to test different types of music, and this is no exception. But this one got caught in the disco era and kind of got lost there. And I think, we'll see what makes the big difference. I know you got it coming up, so we'll go with that. So yeah, this is a misfire. I think they tried.
Let me ask you, when you talk about artists that are around for 30, 40 years, I'm not going into specifics, but doesn't this seem to happen with a lot of them, though? You have that early run. They've been together now for 10-plus years, perhaps. You have the changing times, and they get lost, and they have to sort of go back and kind of reconfigure to kind of get back either with their core audience or find a new audience. Do we see that with bands over times? I'm not saying every single one, but I feel like this is a familiar pattern with some artists or bands.
Well, look, if you think about how many bands are out there, there are only 25 or 30 that can still pack arenas and stadiums after 30, 40 years because they win. Most of them start strong, I think, and they just maintain, and they never fall into that nostalgia act, with the rare exceptions. They're always bringing something new to the table. And Chicago, is I don't know where I'd character. They're definitely a fascinating group because of all the personnel changes and all the style changes. I put the what I compare them with? I compare them with Styx. Is that a fair comparison?
I know I'm not a huge. I definitely am somewhat familiar with Styx, and I have had a couple albums when I was younger.
I would say I'm as familiar with Styx as I am with Chicago, and so I look at them in the same. They spent a lot of years trying to figure out who they were, and I still don't think they've figured out who they are, but they're still packing. I won't say arenas, but they're packing theaters, which is and if they were to, and I know we're getting off topic, but just like Chicago, I do believe that if Chicago reunited with Cetera and Styx reunited with Dennis DeYoung, I think both could sell out arenas around the country.
Agreed. Chicago 14 was produced by Tom Dowd. Tom Dowd recorded albums by many artists, including Eddie Money, Bee Gees, Clapton, Derek and the Dominoes, Rod Stewart, to name a few. The reason why I'm just mentioning this was he was the first producer to really relegate the horn section to the background on a number of tracks, and this was disastrous. The album peaked at number 71 on the Billboard 200. So now, Groo, here's where things really begin to move. In 1981, the band hired a new producer, one Mr. David Foster. Mm-hmm. They ended up on a new record label, Warner Brothers Records. Under Foster's stewardship, less of an emphasis again was placed on the band's horn-based sound, being replaced by power ballads, which became Chicago style during the 80s. This new sound brought more singles to the band. So we have the 1982 album Chicago 16. The band worked with composers from outside the group for the first time. Foster brought in studio musicians, session musicians for some tracks, including some of the core members of the band Toto, used new technology such as synthesizers to update and streamline the Chicago sound, further pushing back the horn section, and in some cases, Groo, not even using the horn section at all. Chicago did return to the charts with the Cetera sung ballad.
Let me guess. I want to guess.
Go.
I think this is Chicago 16. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I think they had two hits. One was Hard to Say I'm Sorry. I knew that, but even though you had already started to say it, was the other one Love Me Tomorrow?
Well, I'm going to apologize and say it could be. I think, by the way, we should change this podcast to I Think or Could Be, the name of the podcast. But I just have because I don't like to have too much copious notes. So I just had Hard to Say I'm Sorry was a number one hit on the Hot 100 chart. It gave Chicago a nomination for the Grammy for Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal. Chicago 16 reached gold and platinum status during the year of its release, and it went to number 9. You could be right. I just don't. I don't have it in front of me.
Well, I don't know if I got the album right, but I remember from the CNN documentary, The History of Chicago. There was an era where there were two hit singles from this time, "Love Me Tomorrow" and "Hard to Say I'm Sorry," and what they both had in common was that they were both the two songs from the album that were written and produced by Cetera and Foster by themselves, David Foster. So it was just that to me that was kind of interesting, and it sort of shows you the direction that they're headed in.
Well, let me go to, because this was a massive album, 1984 Chicago 17. I remember this. I was in high school.
Sure.
Biggest selling album in the band's history. Certified by the RIAA in 97 as 6 times multi-platinum. The album produced 2 more top 10 hits. They both peaked at number 3. You're the Inspiration, written by Cetera and David Foster. Hard Habit to Break, written by Steve Kipner and John Lewis Parker. The single Hard Habit to Break brought 2 more Grammy Award nominations for the band for Record of the Year and Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group. The album included 2 other singles, Groo, that charted. Stay the Night, which we are familiar with, number 16. Another composition by Cetera and Foster, and my favorite, Along Comes a Woman.
Great song.
That went number 14. That was written by Cetera and Mark Goldenberg, Jewish. The band even embraced the newest medium, Groo. MTV, the music video channel, as it released music videos for all singles on Chicago 17.
These videos were so amazingly bad, they were beautiful. Like, do you remember the Stay the Night video where he's singing in like the back of a pickup truck or a Jeep or something?
No, but I do remember everybody loved You're the Inspiration. That was like everyone. That was like
with Cetera pretending to play the guitar, sitting there like this. You're the meaning in my life. like it's so shameless, but it's such great fluffy music. Well,
let's get to it, Groo. Peter Cetera departs Chicago.
After 17 is when he departed?
Yes.
Because this is, to me, Chicago 17 is basically a greatest hits album. To me. You don't think so?
I mean, greatest hits, if you're looking at the pop realm. I mean, I really like that first. When I say really like, I mean, I enjoyed that first run of Chicago. I felt like that first era, like most bands, it's a little meatier. It's a little heavier. It's a little more culturally rich than the Cetera stuff. I don't dislike the Cetera stuff. I just like it for other reasons. You know what I mean?
Right. No,
as you like to say, ear candy. Candy.
Hey, sometimes you like a Jolly Rancher instead of a piece of, what do they call that? Edamame.
Well, as I've mentioned to Groo off air, there's not a ton of stuff on Peter Cetera's departure, but from what I did find out or did read was Cetera had proposed an arrangement with Chicago where he would go on hiatus to let him focus on his solo work, mirroring that of Phil Collins and Genesis. But the band declined. Cetera ultimately left Chicago in the summer of 1985. He soon topped the charts with Glory of Love, the theme song from the film Karate Kid Part 2, and also Next Time I Fall, a duet with Amy Grant. Groo, 2 more Cetera singles reached the top 10, a 1988 solo hit called One Good Woman that reached number 4 in the U.S., and a 1989 duet with Cher called After All, which reached number 6. Cetera released his 4th studio album, World Falling Down, which earned him 3 hits on the adult contemporary chart, including the single Restless Heart. Cetera's position was filled by bassist and singer-songwriter Jason Scheff, son of Elvis Presley bassist Jerry Scheff. I'll just wrap it up with this. Chicago soldiered on with Chicago 18, which was the final David Foster produced led Chicago album. Chicago 18 was released in September 29th of 86 and charted the number 3 single, Will You Still Love Me? So I've said a lot. I will take a pause and a little sippy of H2O. Groo, thoughts on the initial comments about Cetera leaving? Hey, can we do a Genesis solo kind of deal? And ultimately the band declining and moving on.
Well, I agree with the band. I hate it. I don't see why those need to happen. And plus, Cetera shouldn't. Number one, I mean, I guess I'm looking at it from both sides. Number one, Cetera shouldn't need to ask permission. Okay, if Cetera wants to go out,
whoa, hold on.
What?
A band is a collective. Now, we could say that there's levels inside the band. I am not disputing that. You mentioned the Eagles. I get it that certain members are more prominent, but it is a collective in theory. So, I mean, a guy should go back to his brothers, and I'm not saying brothers they really feel that way anymore, but he should go back to his brethren and say, hey, I want to do this. Can we work out a deal? Can we work out an arrangement? Now, the band said no. But, I mean, do you think Cetera should have just went, F you guys? I'm going to go out on my own?
I do not think he should have went, F you guys. I think he should have... No, I think he really should have tried to work something out if that's what he wanted to do. I don't see... I guess the band saying no... number one, I don't know where they get the right to say no unless it's in a contract. But what?
Oh, don't bands? Isn't it like a publicly traded company? Don't they have band shares, and can't they vote? Like,
but what does a Peter Cetera album have to do with Chicago? What does a Phil Collins album have to do with Genesis? Nothing. I think it sounds to me like Cetera was being somewhat loyal because him being now the face of the band. Him going solo is basically like Chicago Light, and so so he might be stealing some of Chicago's thunder in a way. Does that make sense to you? Like, because think of some of those songs. Just 1 second, just so I don't lose the thought. But think of some of the songs that you mentioned. You mentioned Next Time I Fall, After All, Glory of Love. All of those songs could have come right off Chicago 17. Okay,
well, thank God it didn't.
Okay, but I'm just saying that's the point. When you look at Phil Collins and Genesis, at least when Phil Collins went solo, there was a huge distinction. It was a very different. Phil Collins solo was very different than Phil Collins and Genesis at the time. As time went on, they morphed a little bit.
I'll take slight umbrage at that statement. I'm not going to. I think they've also, you've heard, could it have just have been, I'm going to get to some other, we're going to dig a little deeper into this, but, so I'll just throw this out there. Could it have been, at least on this point, as simple as Genesis, his bandmates valued Phil Collins more and said, you know what, we want to work with this guy, we'll work around him.
Well,
and perhaps Chicago just said, you know what, we could, because...
I think I have your answer. Because Genesis, if you remember, and I know you do, both Mike Rutherford and Tony Banks, they went off and did their own solo stuff too. Okay? Might not have been as successful as Collins, but they did it too. The Chicago guys did not have the names. They didn't have the solo, they were, number one, they were a much bigger group, okay? And they didn't, it's like, tonight, Danny Seraphine playing at at the Atlantis Club.
I want to say one thing. I did get tickets for the Lamb Pankow experience. It was at Westbury Music Fair. I was 13.
Chicago was never. I don't think Chicago was ever a band where even the hardcore fans were so simpatico with everybody. Like, I'm not a Grateful Dead fan, but I could name every member. Okay. I could name Mickey Hart, Bill Kreutzmann, Phil Lesh. I could do that. You. No, but I could do that. Oh. But that means that any one of those guys, and they have, could go out on their own and generate some kind of revenue. Okay? I don't think that Chicago single members, besides Cetera, could have done that. They didn't have the fan base. Okay? Cetera did. Foster, in fact, I'll bet you Foster was the one who convinced Cetera that he could go out on his own and become a hit machine. Because Foster, I think, produced some of his albums and co-wrote some of those songs. So, okay. I think that had a lot to do with it.
Can I interject now? Okay.
Please do.
I did find a Chicago fan board, and I did find some things that these were all viewer comments. So basically, one guy said Peter Cetera hated horns, period. Didn't like them in other artist bands' music, didn't like them in Chicago's music, really resented to having to put horn parts in his own songs, and left them out as many of his songs as he could. There's one thing.
Okay,
next thing. Peter only liked Robert Lamb's pieces, but he thought Robert Lamb lost it around 1974, the Chicago 7 era. In his eyes, the group songs got weaker and weaker by the album. He was not a big fan of anyone else's material, especially James Pankow's.
So he became disillusioned, I guess.
Around 1980, the Chicago 14 era, Peter had to shoulder a good deal of the songwriting load. Load, gang. The album performed poorly. The tour was not well received, and Peter felt justified in his belief that he was playing the wrong music with the wrong group. Changing production tactics by bringing in David Foster, which the guy says was Danny Serafin's idea, by the way, gave him a lot more latitude as he became the de facto leader of the group and could have it his way more often than not. That's why the horns are so absent on 16 and 17. But even after getting his way for a couple of albums, there was still touring, playing those old songs with those horns. Eventually he had enough.
Well, okay, so see, there's a lot of stuff in there that I didn't know. So I guess when you're looking
I have more, but go ahead.
Okay, when you're looking at it from that perspective, if you're not liking most of the music that you're playing, why wouldn't you go off on your own where you could literally play the songs that you want to play?
By the way, this is a fan board, so this is all conjecture. But I think there's probably some truth.
But it sounds legitimate because it makes sense. Because you're right; those horns are like Cetera and horns do not seem to go together, except on a couple of those songs like 25 or 624. But yeah, later on the horns were completely absent, and I guess if he doesn't like you said, if he's not liking the music that the group is putting out, then why stay? The questions that I have are why erase it from your legacy, which is what he seems to be intent on doing. That's my question.
Well, let's move on. The death of Terry Kath and the hardships that the band faced aftermath was noted on the fan board.
Right.
As far as musical differences, when Chicago began working with David Foster, well, this is just, again, it's saying Cetera realized he was kind of tired of the trademark brass-heavy sound of Chicago. So that's pretty much... Okay, so, and then last comment I have, Groo, was from a personal standpoint, the time the band had been together took its toll on the musicians as a whole. Peter had a good alternative as a solo career. He felt it was in his best interest to go his own way. There was just other things, such as different opinions about touring and the fact that Cetera didn't want to play the bass anymore. So perhaps this piece saying Cetera really wanted to just be a front man and be a lead singer and perhaps not play the bass anymore. Groo, overall, there's not a lot there on Cetera in leaving the Chicago band, leaving the Chicago machine. So, Groo, final thoughts on what you just heard about Peter Cetera initially leaving Chicago?
Well, it seems that if the band had been willing to, quote-unquote, allow him to do solo while still coming back to Chicago, then maybe they'd still all be together today. But that might explain the animosity Cetera seems to have against his former bandmates for not letting him go and do what he wanted to do himself that had nothing to do with Chicago. They obviously didn't want to play more of his type of music, so he went along with them. But there's only so long you can go with doing work that you're not proud of. Even though he should be proud of it, that's a personal decision. But I guess that he probably still holds a little bit of a grudge that those guys never let him do what he wanted to do, so he had to sort of force his way out. And his attitude is, shit, why come back? Those guys didn't respect me enough to support what I wanted to do with my own life and free time. Because if you look at some of the other bands that have done that, they have been supportive. They have allowed, it never works out well, but it never ends well. But
you got to see, for our listeners, Groo's face, the passion, like the veins in his. Why wasn't this group supportive?
Well, you know what? We discovered that we can do those promos, those videos. Maybe we'll do a video podcast one of these days. we could
Groo,
do that.
you mentioned Cetera and those hard feelings. So let's talk about a few other things. Fans waited and waited for a potential Chicago reunion. Some 32 years later, Groo, Chicago was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Actually, I wrote indicted. That's a great spelling error. Even I, Evan Moody, was excited to see the possibility of Peter Cetera back on the main stage with his bandmates. And Groo, it was supposed to happen, but it never did.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't remember.
So courtesy of StereoGum.com.
Of what?
Frustrated
Stereo Gum?
Yes. I mean, there's not a lot there, but
Is
Peter Cetera,
is that today's version of Hit Parader?
Could be. Frustrated Peter Cetera backs out of the Rock and Roll Chicago reunion. So the article goes on to say that at first Cetera emphatically declined to take part in the reunion. Then he threatened to walk away, citing some unnamed issue in the negotiations. And Cetera went on his blog to announce that he definitively will not rejoin Chicago at the 2016 Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And then Cetera wrote on his blog, I just sent this to the R&R Hall of Fame people. This is the short, high road, the nice version of what I really wanted to say. I'll just post the response at the appropriate time. Ciao, Alex and Joel. Unfortunately, this scenario doesn't work for me. And he basically says he's frustrated. And this article goes on to say that he wasn't even writing members of Chicago. He was writing Rock and Roll Hall of Fame producers Alex Coletti and Joel Piersman. Robert Lamb has gone on to say that he basically rumor mill that Chicago, the band, did not want to lower the key for a performance of 25 or 6-4 for Cetera, and that Cetera had hard feelings. Well, this was actually afterwards. So Cetera has also noted his hard feelings for the 2019 documentary, which we'll talk about after this. So Groo, Cetera does not join Chicago for the 2016 Rock and Roll induction. Basically just saying it's not for him, though there are some rumors that perhaps the performance and the key of certain songs was not agreed upon. Sounds kind of silly to me, but I'll throw it to my boy. Well, what do you got?
Okay, well, because you did mention the documentary, and I know we'll get there, but the documentary came out after the Hall of Fame thing.
I did say that. That's why I said, we'll talk about it afterwards, if you were listening to me.
Yeah, I know. But so the Hall of Fame thing, if it was all about the key, that's on the band. Because guess what? If Cetera, if the guy who's going to sing the song can't hit the notes can't hit the original notes as best he can to sound his best, then the band should absolutely lower the key. If they didn't want to do it, that's on them, and that's a big fuck you to Cetera, I think. Now that all right,
hold
go
on.
ahead.
Let me add something.
Go.
Cetera does say on his blog, we did our best to make it happen, but I guess it's just not meant to be. Personally, I'm frustrated and tired of dealing with this, and it's time to move on. And then he talks about his family, his lovely daughters. So he is intimating frustration, probably relating to now having to deal with bandmates and creative decisions based on their performance.
I don't know how much creativity comes into lowering the key so the guy can sing the song that you want to sing.
Well, how come you'll rip Billy Joel for singing in a lower key, but here, somehow I feel like you're giving Cetera, I don't know if it's a pass, but like you feel like, I guess you're feeling like it was all Chicago and perhaps not Cetera, because to me the article also kind of paints Cetera as being a little bit of a diva.
Absolutely. I was only addressing one thing, and you're right about that. And you're right about that. How I do rip Billy Joel for doing that, and I think the reason that I rip Billy Joel for it is because I think he can still hit those notes. He's just afraid to try. That's what it seems like to me. Cetera is a tenor. Cetera's way up there. So to be able to keep that for 40 years is not easy. So I can understand, especially on a song like 25 or 624.
at the time of their induction, he's probably well into his late 60s. So, that voice has got some miles.
Yeah, so, I would, and especially that kind of, when you're singing that high for that long, Steve Perry can't hit those notes anymore. So he lowers the key a little bit so he can put on an effective performance. And I am tough on Billy Joel like that too. You're absolutely right. But I do think Billy Joel just he's a little bit lazy when it comes to that. But I'm sure that the band, it wasn't just the key. I'm sure they were trying to make things a little difficult for him because they probably still resented him leaving and becoming a moderate success, without them. I mean, look, he probably bought 3 houses over the glory of Love Alone, So, I'm sure Chicago, I think Peter Cetera might be just as popular alone as Chicago is, or maybe was in the late 90s, early 2000s. So there's probably some resentment on the band members' side as well. So maybe they were trying to literally not make it easy for him, and maybe that's why he was like, screw this, and just said he was just frustrated. He doesn't want to deal with this shit. Because they could have just as easily sung a different song. But obviously it's more than just the key of the song.
Groo, you mentioned the 2019 documentary on CNN. I did find some quotes from Cetera. Clearly, he has hard feelings about that documentary. Please allow me to read you some of these quotes, and then I'd like to get your opinion on the following. Mm-hmm. Quote, "This was supposed to be a documentary, but one of the guys in the group, his brother, makes films, so he did it. How could it be a documentary if it was done by somebody in the group pushing it rather than fair and honest reporting? The documentary, titled Now More Than Ever, The History of Chicago, was directed by Peter Pardini, nephew of Lou Pardini, the keyboardist with Chicago since 2009. The newspaper Chicago Tribune, among others, took CNN to task for airing a documentary produced by the subject of the documentary. Cetera is quoted as saying, "I called it a crockumentary. I was going to make one and play one, and every time there was what I'd call fake news, I'd stop the video and say, now this is what really happened. But as time goes on, I push more of that into the past. I don't really care about it anymore. So in the end, I wrote, Groo, in the end, it really sounds like to this day, Peter Cetera still has very hard feelings towards Chicago, and I, Evan Moody, certainly don't expect to see them on stage anytime soon. So Groo, final thoughts on the documentary and the final thoughts on Chicago breakup, Peter Cetera."
Well, I call a little bit of bullshit on that, and here's why. Number one,
come on.
No, a little bit.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I know we talk about other groups in this. So, look, the Eagles documentary, The History of the Eagles, was produced by the Eagles. Okay, so this is not the first time that's happened. All right? Number one, you're talking about the nephew of a session player who became a main member in 2009.
That's your opinion. That's your opinion.
Yeah.
That's your opinion.
Yes, my opinion, yes. So I think, but at the same time, Cetera could, in this documentary, and set the record straight, and then if he didn't like the way it was portrayed, he could pull himself out of it and say, go screw yourselves. But he chose not to. What?
Nah, I'm not buying it. I don't disagree in all of your points, but I believe there's a legitimate gripe there.
Wait. Let me finish. All right. Let me just finish what I'm saying.
I'm actually agreeing with Peter Cetera, but I do believe.
No, I hold on. Wait. Let me finish what I'm saying. There definitely is a legitimate gripe, definitely, but I think that him saying the documentary is produced by a brother of a member of a band, I think it's a little bit of a cop-out. Because he still could have come on and said whatever the hell he wanted and set whatever record straight that he wanted to say. He could have said anything. He chose not to, and I think he cited that reason. And that's where
He did, and I believe that's a legitimate gripe. Now,
really?
Could he have perhaps worked something out? Could he? But I mean, you're talking about. I find that very funny. You're talking about the nephew of the keyboardist. Okay, since 2009, you call him a session player. Perhaps that's your opinion. Hold on. Okay. I gave you the floor.
Okay.
I gave you the floor. Let me. But my thing is, I don't disagree that he maybe could not have worked something out. But again, this is a guy that's been there since 2009, post Peter Cetera. The band, as you said, they're hard feelings. They're probably trashing him internally, not on an everyday basis. I'm sure his name doesn't come up too much anymore, but I'm sure when it does, he's not getting, Citizen of the Year. Yeah. And so I think he's justified in feeling to some extent. Now, to what extent, I'll debate that. But I believe he's justified in saying this is, if not fake, stilted news. It's produced by a family member from the band. The band has hard feelings about me. Why do I want to go on there and justify perhaps a rip job? I didn't see the documentary, and I'm not saying it was a rip job or it wasn't. But
you didn't see it?
Excuse me?
You didn't see it?
Bits and pieces.
Oh, I did. It's not a rip job, not at all. I was surprised. I thought it would be. It's not. I
mean, listen, calling it a crock, all that's drama, but I do believe there's a legitimate gripe there to be had.
Definitely. But look, if you said to me that the documentary was being written and produced by the wife of the late Terry Kath, that's one thing. Okay, it's like having Paul McCartney agreeing to do a thing directed by Yoko Ono. But obviously, it seems to me that the nephew of the new keyboardist was maybe a filmmaker, or whatever, and whatever. I think it's a little bit of a cop out. No doubt that there's hard feelings on Cetera's side and on the band side. No doubt whatsoever. They were probably pissed at him for not showing up at the Hall of Fame, and he was probably pissed at them for not being willing to lower the key. These are adults, man. Like, I'll never understand how it could be so difficult to work with people you don't get along with on a personal level, because work is work and personal life is personal life. You're always going to run into people that you don't see eye to eye with. And and you should know that better than anybody else, because we all complain. So why is it any different? I mean, to me, basically, to sum up this whole deal, perhaps really all the money in the world cannot fix hard feelings. Perhaps it's we always say, you're right.
We listen to Howard Stern and he goes, why couldn't the Eagles or Van Halen? So much money on the table. Perhaps at the end of the day, there's such feelings of animosity or feelings of hurt or feelings of guilt or whatever it is, and it just prevents people from moving forward.
I will say this about Cetera, though. Okay? You never hear him or never see him complaining about like his life. Like, he seems content with where he is. He seems, he's happy with what he's doing. He doesn't live in the past. If he's bitter, he talks about the future. He doesn't talk about the past.
No, and as a matter of fact, I found a local news article from like Knoxville, Tennessee, from like 2 years ago, where he was playing like a local gig in a small arena, a small venue, and I felt like his responses were very similar to Steve Perry. Like, I'm not really want to talk about the past. I want to move, talk about.
Yeah, maybe they're just maybe they're just happy where they are, and there's no reason to rock that.
Well,
boat.
Until I was rudely interrupted. He wanted to say he wanted to focus in on the music, and he wanted to talk about actually musical opportunities in the future. He wanted to do. I think he mentioned he wanted to do a guy and guy duet, and I was like, oofa.
Yeah. Well, look, the way
call James Corden. Call James Corden.
Well, look, the way you have painted this stunningly beautiful portrait, it makes more sense that Cetera refuses to go back with Chicago. It still doesn't make much sense with like Perry or DeYoung with those two groups. I still can't figure out Why not one performance at a Hall of Fame thing? Why not that? Like, you just explained to me why Cetera, and it makes sense. Okay, Perry just didn't want to do it, and I know that. And there was no animosity. He was like, like, you don't need,
let's save it for the Journey podcast.
Yeah, but it's like, with Cetera, I guess on some level, I kind of respect that, because even though I wish he would, still, for him not to do it, he's definitely leaving money on the table. He's leaving a definite uptick in his career on the table. He obviously doesn't need it. You don't see Peter Cetera, like Peter Cetera signs all over Atlantic City or Vegas. He's obviously not, he's put out a couple albums, but he's obviously content and happy with his life right now. And in his mind, he's like, I don't need to go back. And I respect that. I wish he would, because it'd be great. It'd be a lot of fun to see and hear new music and hear that voice again. But I respect his. He's not going for a cash grab like so many people do. The worst thing, and we've seen it. The worst thing these guys can do. What? The worst thing these guys can. Evan's looking at me like I'm nuts. The worst thing these guys can do is get on stage for a cash grab. You can sense that it's a bunch of shit. It's not working. I can't think of any examples right now. Actually, I can. One, the Sammy Hagar Van Halen reunion in 2004.
Yes. Well, yes. I was thinking.
But you can tell that it doesn't work, and that they're just doing it for the money. So I kind of respect the fact that Cetera's chosen not to, in a way.
We ended last week's podcast so brilliantly, and it was so smooth. And I'm looking, and then Groo's just like, and then another thing, and then another Styx Journey. I'm like, wait a second.
Let's talk about the breakup of the Manhattan Transfer. Let's see. Since we're doing city bands,
Groo, off we go for another time. That was Chicago breaks up. Peter Cetera leaves the band.
Yes, it happened.
You want me to get to the plugs?
No. No, wait. I just.
Oh Lord, we talked this all out.
No, I was too busy laughing.
I got to urinate. My dog's
I actually learned a lot from this one, and I'm interested. I actually now want to watch that documentary again.
Yeah, so do I. So do I. I think my last takeaway, and I do want to wrap it up, but it does feel very heavy feelings. It feels like Peter Cetera, and perhaps even Chicago. There's been some comments by Lamb and Pankow. It feels really, sometimes with other, like you mentioned, Journey, it's like it's just not for us. We're just going to kind of be friends in our separate universes, and we respect each other. Here, it feels kind of heavy. It feels a little bit angry. I want to rewatch that documentary. It's available on CNN on CNN.com. And I think it's available on Amazon too, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, good! I'm going to look it up. I'm going to watch it this afternoon.
It's called Now More Than Ever. The history.
Actually, after we're done here, I'm going to walk the doggy. I'm going to grab lunch, and I'm going to sit my ass down on the couch, and I'm going to see if I can find that documentary. I'm actually looking forward to it now. I want to see it.
I think you'll find it interesting. But before you do that, Evan, we've got some plugs to get to. So let's see who is sponsoring us this week.
Well, no, the plugs, if you want to listen to a current or older Nothing Worthwhile podcast, check us out on podcast.apple.com. Check out Andrew Gruthius on Instagram at instagram.com/Andy Groos with a CE. Check out Andy Gruthius on Facebook at facebook.com/Andy Groo. Hit up Evan Moody on Instagram at instagram.com/Evan.Moody.9. Great one there. Hit up Evan Moody on Facebook at facebook.com/Evan.Moody.9. Check out Nothing Worthwhile on Facebook at facebook.com/Nothing Worthwhile 1985. And finally, check out Nothing Worthwhile on Twitter, twitter.com/Nothing Groo. Of course, Nothing Grew. It's Nothing Worthwhile with Groo.
They made it. They generated.
Oh, you said bullshit. That's such crap. Nothing grew.
I called myself nothing, and you're yelling at me for it.
Groo, you want to let us know about next week's show?
Next week, we're going back into territory we haven't been in a while. We don't know exactly which one yet, but we'll be going back into the movies and television genre as we dig deep into another classic or classics, at least determined by Mr. Moody and myself. But until then, Evan, this has been the pleasure that it always is, was, and always will be to give a shout out to our old friend Brett the Hitman Hart. It's always a pleasure to be here with you, even though we are separated by a wall of computer screen. Hopefully we will be doing this in person sooner rather than later.
That would be fun. That would be fun.
And we will. It will happen. But until then, I want you and yours to stay safe, stay healthy, enjoy your life, and please do something that's worthwhile. Save nothing worthwhile for us. When you leave here, do something worthwhile with your Saturday, with your Sunday. All right, anyway. All right, next week on Nothing Worthwhile, we're going back to the movies. Since you can't go in person, come on here, do it here. You'll have a great time, as always. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, 1, 2, 3.
Whack, whack. Rest in peace, Mary Wilson and Larry Flint, Hustler.